Hello, and welcome to the January 26th, 2022 general business meeting of the Oak Grove Community Council. I'm Joseph Edge, the chair, and I'm going to share our presentation screen to get started and tell you about tonight. There we go. Okay, so first up, we'll do introductions and officer reports, and then we have the owner of Infamous Barber Studios here with us to introduce his business, and then we have some representatives from the county's Equity and Inclusion Office, and some Blue Art and committee updates, and then hopefully some time for social time at the end. So first up, I'd like to stop sharing and ask our officers to introduce themselves. So first of all, I'm Joseph Edge, I'm the chair, and I live in the River Forest neighborhood. Valerie, could you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Valerie Chapman, and I live on Evergreen Street, just a block and a half from the trolley trail.
Jane?
I am Jane Civiletti. I'm the treasurer, and I live on the corner of Oak Grove Boulevard and Fair Oaks Avenue.
Danielle?
Hi, Danielle Lohman. I'm the secretary. I live on Evergreen and 21st.
Rich?
Hi, I'm Rich Nippon. I live about a block and a half behind the Grove restaurant off of McLaughlin. We're 3 blocks south of Freddy's on Oak Grove Boulevard.
And Mark?
Hi, I'm Mark Elliott, and I live off of Concord Road, just between McLaughlin and River Road, and I'm a general board member.
And just to mention it, we do have a vacancy for an at-large position on our board. So if you are a voting member, you are eligible to be on the board of directors. And so if you have interest in that, then please let us know. Be happy to have additional help running the business here. So with that, we're going to go through the list of attendees, and I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself and the name of the street that you live on, so that we can make sure that we capture attendance for tonight. So I'm just going to go through the list, and I'll figure out if we missed anyone when we get to the end. Okay. So first up, I'm going to ask Anita. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Anita Blackmar. Live on Fair Oaks Avenue.
Ashley Tutane, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, Ashley Tutane. I live on Cedar Avenue.
Thank you. James.
Steve Philbeck, I live at Rose Villa.
James? I didn't hear you.
Are you referring to me?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I live on River Road.
And can we get your first and last name?
James Carthel, Carthel.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Jovian, could you introduce yourself, please?
Hey guys, I'm Jovian. I live in Happy Valley.
Okay. Thank you. Marilyn.
Hi, I'm Marilyn Wall, and I live on the Aldercrest near Oatfield.
Thank you. Pam.
Oh, I'm Pam Horan. I live on Schroeder in Rose Villa.
Thank you. Paul.
Paul Savas, Clackamas County Commissioner, live on Kronberg Avenue in Oak Grove.
Susan.
Hi, I'm Susan Keel. I live on Oak Shore Lane, and I am the president of Oak Lodge Water Services Board.
Tom?
Good evening. I'm Tom Hammond. I live on Viewcrest Drive. I'm a member of the Milwaukee Lions Club.
Thanks for joining us. Let's see, Selma. Could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm looking here. Thelma Hagen Miller, and was there a question tonight? I just now tuned in.
Your first and last name and name of the streets that you live on. Just capturing
Oh,
attendance.
okay. Westview Avenue off of Concord.
Thank you. Tips.
Hi, I'm Chips. I'm Chips Janger. I live on Fair Oaks Avenue, and have been involved in this wonderful community organization for many, many years, and I'm very happy to see everybody here.
Let's see, I think we already got Dave. Cece, could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, all. I'm Cece. I use she, her pronouns. I am with the Equity and Inclusion Office. I'm one of our program coordinators, and I am an Oregon City resident.
Welcome. Gwen, could you introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Gwen. I live on Evergreen Street, close to Trolley Trail, and married to Valerie.
Thank you. Jean. Jean Coberly, could you introduce yourself? Oh, we can check back with Jean in a moment. Joyce,
I've got
could you
her
introduce
on the
yourself
team.
and the name of the street? Okay.
Joseph Jean said she can't unmute.
I'm Joyce Johnson, and I live off of Rothy on Gordon Street.
Thank you. Maria.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Maria Magallon. I use ella, she, her pronouns, and I am also a coordinator in the Office of Equity and Inclusion.
Welcome. Martine, could you introduce yourself, please?
Certainly. Hello, everyone. My name is Martine Koblenz. I also use she, her pronouns, and I am the Equity and Inclusion Officer for Clackamas County. And I'm a Gladstone resident, so close to Oak Grove.
Welcome. Mitra.
Hi, I'm Mitra Anusharavani. I use she, her pronouns, and I live on Ruby Drive.
Neil.
Hi, I'm Neil Schulman from the North Clackamas Watersheds Council. Our office is in Milwaukee, but our coverage area includes all of Oak Grove, Jennings Lodge, and part of Gladstone as well. And I'm looking forward to listening to the presentations coming up.
Good to have you, Neil. Let's see, up next is Bob.
Hi, I'm Bob Bohannon. I live on Southeast Laurie.
Good to see you, Bob. Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Clay. I live off of Southeast River Road.
And Sue Conahan.
Sue Conahan on Parkview Circle.
And I think we've got through the list. So if anyone is missed, then please either raise your hand in Zoom or chat Danielle and let her know your first and last name and the name of the street you live on, so we can get you for attendance tonight. Let's see. So up next we have our officer reports. So I'm going to turn this over to Danielle to update us on meeting minutes and membership updates.
Okay. Yeah. And then so I also got Jean Byfield and Robert Bohannon, I don't believe you called his name. So if I didn't say your name just now and Joseph didn't say your name, give me a chat and I'll get you for the attendance. All right, so I have 2 meeting minutes to approve. It's the October 27th and the 21st meeting minutes. I didn't receive any edits for those. Are they okay to approve?
I'm going to stop sharing really quick. If anyone has any corrections to the minutes, please unmute and say something or raise your hand in Zoom. Okay, it looks like there are no corrections. Still will consider those approved.
Excellent. And then I did want to note a few membership updates. So actually, the first thing I want to do before I go into that is let folks know what it means to be a voting member. So according to the bylaws, if you attend 5 council business meetings in the previous 12 months, you can become a voting member on your 6th meeting. So that's why we take attendance and why we go through all the names is because I'm recording to make sure that, you know, if you are a member that I have you for if we take a vote, or if you're about to become a member, I can let you know. So I do want to, it looks like Mitra, you at your next meeting will become a voting member. And then that's all I have for this month. So congratulations, Mitra, on your next, you're almost there. And so I did want to let you know that, and those are all my updates. Joseph, you're on mute.
I sure am. Thank you, Danielle. Up next is James Civiletti, our treasurer, with the treasurer's report.
Thank you, Joseph. The treasurer report stands as it has for some time. We are still at $1,526.18. No money spent, and unfortunately, no money in. If anyone would like to, I will give a better presentation next month, but pop into the On Point Community Credit Union, mention Oak Grove Community Council. You can make a deposit directly into our account. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jane. So up next, we have our featured local business, which is the infamous Barber Studio. And the owner is Jovian, and he's here with us tonight. So Jovian, you have the floor.
How's it going, guys? So fair warning, this is my first ever Zoom meeting, so we'll see how it goes. So yeah, my name is Jovian. I was born in Guanajuato, Mexico, and moved to Oregon when I was 6, raised in Molalla, and it's class of 09. And I've been a barber now for almost 10 years. And yeah, sometime in the summer, I thought it was time to do my own thing. I was working up in Portland the past 10 years, and to me, Old Grove was Milwaukee. I like Milwaukee. That was my little kind of gate to Portland, you know, avoiding the freeway, take 99 up, and I always liked it, and found the spot, and yeah, it's been 2 great months, and yeah, it's only a 1-chair little studio for now. Maybe add on another chair or 2, but I want to keep it kind of private, kind of more, I don't know, more. Every shop I've worked at, it's always been 4 or 5 chairs, super loud, and I think I'm ready for something a little quieter, more relaxed, and yeah, and thankfully everything's going really good. If you guys have any questions or anything, I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us where you're located. Sorry, I'm Valerie.
Yeah, sorry. It's 2130, right next to Awakening, in between Awakening and Buy Right, I think the market is called. Yeah, so right there.
Cool. Valerie, I saw you put your hand up.
Do you take reservations?
I do. Yeah, that's another thing. It's only by reservations. You can call the shop. I have an online booking site. You can just walk in, and I can schedule you for later in the day or later in the week, whatever works.
You want to give us that number?
Yeah, you guys ready? I don't even have a seat, sorry.
I actually have that, and I can share that on the.
Okay,
screen
yeah,
right
you
now.
could. Yeah. And I have a website coming. It's not here yet, but hopefully soon.
Jane, see your hand.
Yes, I wanted to ask Jovian if he does men's hairstyles or if he also does women's.
You know, when I was in school, I actually learned both, but I feel like women's wasn't very fun.
Oh,
So, just men's.
okay. Maybe I'll have a buzz cut. We'll see.
Well, my stylist feels the same way about men's haircuts, so it's okay, right?
Gene, I see your hands up.
How did you come up with the name Infamous?
You know, me and my dad watched a lot of Westerns when I was younger. And I don't know, maybe it was Infamous Billy the Kid or something, but Infamous always kind of seemed like the most wanted, like the gunslingers or something. And I always thought it sounded cool. And I feel like it was always a thought in my mind that, like, if I ever had my own shop, that's what I'm gonna call it, because whether people come to me or not, they've heard of me. So Infamous, you know, they know it from one way or another. And honestly, I thought it sounded cool. So yeah.
Mark, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I just wanted to vouch for Jovian. I was one of his early clients here, and I found Jovian through a referral and was able to make a reservation online. It was really easy, Jovian, and I just kind of Googled your name and found it. And the nice thing was that you're able to set up an appointment in advance in the time frame that you want, and that worked really well. And I got all these messages beforehand reminding me when my appointment was, so that system for me worked really well. And I've been really pleased with Jovian's work. You know, I don't have a lot of hair, but you know, I like to take care of what I have. So I have to say, Jovian took really good care of me. So I vouch very, very good for him.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mark. Martine, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, hi. I was wondering if you cut children's hair.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have an age limit. It's really more so like if they sit still, I guess, you know, for the most part.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've cut as young as 11 months. So
Oh, wow.
really,
Okay.
yeah, it just depends on the kid.
Are there any additional questions for Jovian before we let him go? Okay, well, thanks a lot for taking the time to introduce yourself to us and tell us, you know, about your business. And
Hey, happy to be here, guys.
thank you. So up next is our main presentation, which is the Clackamas County Equity and Inclusion Office. We have Martine, Cece, and Maria. And I'd like to turn it over to them. I was fortunate enough to see their presentation to the North Clackamas Watersheds Council in the fall, and so I was, you know, really inspired by, you know, what they were, the work that they're doing at the county, and you know, the information that they're learning about, you know, the area, and I thought it was important to bring them here and let them present to this group. So take it away. Oh, Valerie, did you have a question?
The question is, does one of you need to share screen so I can see? Okay, I will get you on.
Thank you so much. So while that happens, we just want to say thank you again for inviting us to come and get to know you all and to share a little bit about who we are and the work that we do. So we've put together a little presentation that Cece is about to put up right now. And we already introduced ourselves, but just quickly again, I serve as the Equity Inclusion Officer. Our office was just founded in August of 2020, so we're still fairly new in this process. And I'll have Maria and Cece just quickly introduce themselves again, since just to remind you of who we are.
Thank you, Maria Magayon, ella, she, her pronouns. And I forgot to mention it in the previous introduction that I'm also from the community of Malala and originally from Michoacan, Mexico.
Hi, all. I'm Cece, she, her pronouns. And yeah, I'm the other Equity Inclusion Program Coordinator. And I think that was everything. Okay. So I'm going to jump into, we're going to talk a little bit about first our office and our vision, our mission, our values, and then we'll go in a little bit more depth there. So for all of these, this is a little bit more broad right now. And if you want us to go in more depth or have questions on that, we'd be happy to chat more at the end. So our vision is that Clackamas County is a place where all people thrive, have a sense of safety, connection, and belonging, so that each person is honored and celebrated for the richness and diversity that they bring. And we think about this vision all the time in all the work we do. We come back to it, and the same with our mission and the principles that we have too.
Yeah, so our mission is that we lead a culture of learning and awareness about equity and inclusion. And we do that by guiding, supporting, and collaborating with county employees and residents, the community, in order to foster welcoming communities and create greater connections where all people thrive and belong. So we often meet with county departments and consult and coach with folks, collaborate internally, and we have a lot of collaborations externally that we'll highlight some of them with you in a little bit.
And this is a list of our principles: courage, compassion, connection, gratitude, and learning. Our principles help guide our work and guide us in how we do our work. Looking at courage, courage is when we create brave spaces. We are learning into dialogue, even when it feels hard. Compassion, when we practice compassion, we understand that we're all in this together as a community. Connection is when we build personal connections and relationships, we create trusted communities. And gratitude is when we step into gratitude, we open ourselves up to positive emotions such as happiness, joy, and we lean into challenges with more resiliency and strength. And learning, when we create a culture of learning, we recognize that what matters most is how we show up when we make mistakes and how we work to reduce and also to repair the cycle of harm. And looking at equity, we used to focus quite a bit on diversity historically. And why is diversity not enough? Why the focus on equity? So when we strive for and achieve diversity, people are still going to be situated differently and have different experiences. This is due to our history, our policies, our culture, society, which brings us to equity. Equity is all about meeting our need. When we all have the opportunity to meet our individual needs for well-being and achieve our full potential. So let's look at the image, the one starting at the top, equality. Everyone here in this picture is given the same exact bicycle to meet a universal goal, but not everyone is able to ride their bike. You can see that in the equality, it may be diverse because it's representative of male, female, and there's a person in a wheelchair, there's a tall person and youth. So visually, you can think, okay, well, equality is good because there's diversity, but that is not enough. Looking at equity is meeting individual needs. In equity, everyone is given exactly what they need, or in this case, they're given a bicycle that they can ride, allowing everyone to get to the same universal goal. And in the first one, they're not even though the bike is the right size for someone and it's way too big or way too small for others, you can see that the tall person is hunched over, so they may not even get to the finish line. So thinking about equity, that is what is going to work to achieve that universal goal where everyone is trying to go, because we are all differently situated. So we need to think about different approaches to reach that universal goal. And that is what equity is.
So we're going to watch a video that showcases this just a little bit more. I'm going to let me know if you can't hear this when it plays.
Most people believe that everyone deserves the same opportunity to achieve good health. That we should all have what's necessary to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. That we should all be given boots that fit. And that's when I learned the difference between equality and equity. See, one ensures everybody gets the same thing while the other ensures everybody gets the something they need. Take 3 neighborhoods. Each one is situated across from the grocery store. One has no transportation system and the streets aren't safe at night. One needs a boat to get there, and one is positioned a block away. Equality says, we hand them all boots and tell them to make do. One size fits all solutions for problems that require more than one resolution. But equity, the quality of being fair and impartial, speaks to access. Equity speaks to safety. Equity speaks to transportation. Equity speaks to understanding. Equity speaks to the actual human condition.
Okay, so next we're going to talk about leading with race and a little bit about why we do that. So I'm going to actually just start by sharing some data with you just to give some examples of leading with race, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what that is. But this is from the Public Health Advisory Council, and it's looking at, sorry, I need to move you all around so I can see here. It's looking at a couple of different racial groups and some of the different determinants of health, and so how we keep our communities healthy. We're not going to go through every single one of these, but we'll go through just a couple of them as examples. So these are all in Clackamas County, and these are examples that many of them, the data you'll see is from 2018. There's some 2017, some 2020, so it's very recent data. So when we look at per capita income, we'll start there. So the per capita income of Clackamas County residents who identify as American Indian, Alaska Native, Black, Latinx, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, multiracial, or a race not listed is an average of 38% less than the per capita income of whites or Asian residents. And so notice here, for example, you can see like the different incomes, and you can see that in this case, all of the racial identities that I just listed are significantly lower, all these red ones, than Asian and white or non-Hispanic. So per capita income is one of our determinants of health, because income is how we can get access to what we need in order to be healthy, right? I'm going to go through a couple of other examples. So we will talk about poverty and we'll talk about houselessness. And this graph here shows more about poverty, right? So you can see American Indian and Alaska Native, right? You have 20.8% compared to white at 7.5%. And this is below the federal poverty level, right? So who is experiencing more poverty? in this case, American Indian, Alaska Natives are experiencing more poverty than any of these other groups, but a lot of these are still really high. And so again, 2018 data. And then I'll go through, I'm gonna skip over the graduation rate, but that is one of the social determinants of health, because we know that folks who have more education tend to be able to get jobs with higher incomes. Diabetes is another social determinant of health. I hope I'm not making y'all dizzy. Birth outcomes as well. And then I wanted to stop on houselessness. So people of color disproportionately experience homelessness or houselessness in Clackamas County. 4% of the respondents of the point in time count in 2019 identified as Native American Alaska Native, despite representing only 7.7% of the total population. So less than 1%, but 4% of the respondents. That's really disproportionate, right? Since 2017, there was near doubling of the number of Black or African American people surveyed. People identifying as Black or African American now make up 4%, but representing 1.2% of the total population. So again, like very disproportionate there. And I'll show you this graph for a second here too. This one's kind of small. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit for you. Just to give you a second to look at that. And the black part there is the census data in comparison. I know this is a lot of data at once. I don't expect you to have it memorized, but it's just to kind of give you a little bit of an idea here. And then there's a couple of other categories here, just so that you know some of the social determinants of health that our public health was looking at. So travel related injuries, I'm just gonna scroll through these. I'm not gonna stop on them. And health insurance, it's a really big one. So in all of these, we can see that folks of color fare worse overall. There are some times that folks who identify as Asian fare maybe better than white people, but not in every category. And obviously the category of Asian is very big, right? So if we broke that down more, you would see that even within there, some folks who are Asian would fare less well than other people too, right? So these are really broad categories. We want to recognize that that can sometimes make the data look a little bit different than it might if we broke it down more. I am going to go back to our PowerPoint. And I'm going to move you all again.
I love the dictating, CC, of what you're doing as you're doing it. It helps me to know, like, okay, this is where we're going. Thank you for helping me not feel dizzy. So, you know, and so what we really hope that you remember in terms of our approach and when we talk about equity and inclusion is this image and this idea, which is we are looking to meet the needs of all people. And we recognize that we are all in the same storm. For example, if we think of the storm as experiencing this pandemic together, COVID-19, we have all been in the same storm. And yet we are differently situated. We saw it with the data that we are in different boats, same storm, but different boats. So depending on the boat that I'm on, the tools that I have, how big or small my boat is, whether or not someone is on board with me, I may weather the storm differently than you. And the goal is that we all make it through, right? So it has to do with the fact that we are differently situated when looking at success outcomes in life, our social determinants of health. We know it in Clackamas County, we know it in this country, that race is that common denominator that can lead to either a more successful or less successful outcome. We can predict that based on the data. So our job to do is to ask, how do we get all these boats staying afloat and surviving this storm and getting to a place of thriving, which is our vision? what are some of the universal goals and outcomes that we want to see for Clackamas County, and how are these various populations and groups that we know are experiencing disparities? How can we get those populations and groups to reach that goal? What do they need? What do they need in order to get there? And so we know that race is not the only factor, and it's not the only identity. We also know that there are folks that experience marginalization or have experienced oppression historically based on other identities, like their disability, their age, their gender, their sexual orientation, all the various other identities. So we recognize that there is intersections of identity. And yet, if all else is equal, even in all those other marginalized groups, race is still that common denominator. And so we're sharing this with you because we want to share that part of our approach is to think strategically about how do we meet the needs of the people in Clackamas County. We want to think strategically because we know that if we look at the people or the groups that are most marginalized and address the needs of those who are most marginalized, we actually lift all of us up. It benefits all. So when we say that we lead with race, this is what we mean by leading with race. It's recognizing the intersectionality, and we're looking at all people in the circle of human concern. So the goal is not just to eliminate even the gap between white people and people of color when we see that there's a gap. The goal is that everybody gets to that target, to that universal goal that we've set. So we recognize that systems that are failing communities of color are actually failing all of us. And so again, if there's nothing else you remember from our presentation, if you remember the same storm, we're all in this together, but we're in different boats. How do we meet the need?
So leading with race means that we are centering the needs of the person that is the most marginalized or furthest from opportunity. When we focus on the needs of the person that is furthest from opportunity, we are in fact helping everyone. Leading with race is a way to make the world more equitable for people of all races, not just people of color. Leading with race is strategic. It helps us know how to focus our efforts to reach the most people for everyone to get to the goal in the most effective ways. So as we create strategic approaches, ultimately it benefits everyone.
With this in mind, we wanted to share with you some of our external goals, or our main external goal, and then what we're working on that works toward that goal. And even though we have 7 things listed here, we're not going to get an opportunity to talk about all of them, but we will each talk about one of them. So the goal that we have is to create a welcoming environment for all who work, live, and play at Clackamas County. So the way that we're hoping to achieve that goal, some of the projects we're working on, we have a racial research justice project, which we'll talk about, coordination of the Equity Coalition. We'll also talk about that one. Listening sessions and town halls for folks who are limited English proficient. The Indigenous Task Force, which we'll talk about. Title II and Title VI. Emergency Operations Center Equity Officer position. And then our Leaders for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Council. And at the end, when we open it up for more questions and stuff, if you have questions on any of these, we can also answer them there. So I'll stop share so that we can all talk about the 3 that we were gonna talk about. And I think Martine, you were gonna go first.
Yes, so the first that we'll talk about is our racial research justice study. We are working with the Coalition of Communities of Color. They actually, last year, they conducted an environmental scan, And in that environmental scan, they collected data from 6 data sources to get a better sense of sort of what is the lived experience of folks in Clackamas County, and not just people-based, but place-based, because we know how geographically large our county is, and that depending on where you live in the county, you're going to have a very different experience if you're in a rural community or if you're in a more urban community. And so out of this environmental scan, the intention was just really to scratch the surface with those data sources, to collect some information, and they came up with a set of recommendations that they said would need to be vetted by community. The recommendations, I'm going to quickly sort of just share what they are, because I think they do matter. I think you might be interested in the work that you do in your community in Oak Grove. One was that we need to have better access and services for people of color, immigrants, refugees, communities of color, that cover housing, healthcare, transportation, internet, schools, and even basic needs like food. Another recommendation was to focus on our multilingual and our multicultural communication and engagement. And we really saw that as a critical need and a critical gap actually in some of our response to emergency response when we had the wildfires and when we had the ice storm. It was really hard to get the word out to communities who are limited English proficient in an effective way. The third is community support and connection. So oftentimes communities of color, what they got from their data collection was that there isn't a sense of connection and community. And so creating more a sense of community support and connection within our communities and our neighborhoods is critical. Representation and leadership. So representation meaning that there are, many fields still where we don't see people of color or women represented in particular fields, and especially in leadership positions, and how important that is. So taking a look at that. Education and training was something that really surfaced for communities of color, the experiences of youth in the K through 12 system and the experiences of young adults in the college systems. And then finally, in policies that are informed by the experiences of communities of color, that there's voice and there's ways to really engage folks that are not engaged, more civic engagement of communities of color, voices that we don't hear from. And so those recommendations, it came out of that environmental scan. What we're doing now is the actual research justice work, where the researchers from the Coalition of Communities of Color has been really deep in community, interviewing folks and pulling together a steering committee of folks that will then vet these recommendations. And at the end of the process, there will be a call to action for everyone. And I say everyone because almost all of our cities contributed monetarily to this project. And we also had the community college contribute, Metro, PGE contributed to this. There's a lot of interest in learning how we can be better in creating welcoming environment and space for our communities who are not part of the majority culture. And so we have a frequently asked questions. We have the environmental scan report. We can give you that information if you're interested in learning more, or we can also talk to you offline. So I'll pause there and pass it on to Cece.
We can also put the link to those in the chat as well. So I want to talk about the Indigenous Task Force. This is a group of folks that all came together from community. And so some folks identify as Indigenous, some do not. And for the folks who do identify as Indigenous, we have a number of different tribes and groups represented. And this group came together to really just like, the thought was, how do we better support our Indigenous community here in Clackamas County. What's going well? What do they need? And through that, this group came together and they built a land acknowledgement. So we actually have 2 land acknowledgements. We have a longer version and a shorter version. Both are on our website. And then additionally, they wanted to do an event for Indigenous Peoples Day last October. And so that is on our Clackamas County YouTube channel as well. You can watch that there. And it was a beautiful event with drumming and dancing, the land acknowledgement, and just talking about why celebrating Indigenous people is really important and recognizing the history and tradition that exists for our Indigenous communities here. So this group is still meeting and they're talking about what they want to do next that gives back to the community. There's a lot of different ideas thrown around, but one of the goals is around how to continue to educate the community, both about not just Indigenous community, but some of the values that many Indigenous cultures tend to hold close. So for example, like how do we have more sustainability at the county in terms of environmentalism, right? And so that's one example of like this group wanting to move forward and continue to do work together that benefits the whole county. Gonna pause there. And then Maria.
Yeah, our office also coordinates the Equity Coalition quarterly meetings, and this is a coalition that's made up of several external equity partners, such as the Westland Alliance, Clackamas Community College Equity Office, Equitable Inclusive Wilsonville, Lake Oswego for Love, Unite Oregon City, as well as other equity partners. We come together to discuss equity issues and we look at data and we talk about different themes, bring in trainers and presenters. And the last meeting, there was a big focus on looking at policing disparities in communities of color and also looking at like arrest data and how communities of color were disproportionately represented. And there were higher numbers of arrests in BIPOC communities than there were actual population in some of these communities. So we also have a group that was interested in talking about the education and the success outcomes for all students, but focusing on the lower academic levels of Black, Indigenous, and students of color as well. And then we also talked about responding collaboratively, how can we work with the communities that are disproportionately affected by the multiple emergencies that we've had, everything from the wildfires, the ice storm, the ongoing pandemic, and how can we reach out to the communities, rural communities, as well as communities of color, to make sure that we are providing them the resources and the tools that they need to build that resiliency so they continue and rise above all these compounding disasters that we are having. So those are just some of the things that have come up in this meetings and that we discuss together. And like I said, it's many more partners than what I mentioned, and it's always such a fruitful discussion. And I will pass it on.
Yep. Thank you, Maria. So that's it. We could probably go on and on, but you all have been so wonderful listening to us, and we want to pause and just say that's what we had presented, but we are so happy to stay a little longer. If you have any questions or comments, back to you, Joseph.
Thank you, Martine and Cece and Maria. We really appreciate having you, and we will have some time. We do have some time for questions. First thing I just wanted to say really quick is I really appreciate the data-driven arguments that you guys are bringing in, through your presentation and communications, and it really helps to lead with the objective data that describes the different experiences that people have, depending on who they are and how they're situated. And so we really particularly, I appreciate,
bringing that data to the table and really being able to defend these narratives with objective data is so helpful. And so then I usually don't do this, but I'm going to start off with a question. Usually I let everyone else go first, but it's a particularly timely issue for us. The County Planning and Zoning Division, their long range planning group, is going through the Housing Strategies Phase 2 work, which is the county's local implementation of the State House Bill 2001 that was passed a couple of years ago. So I'm just curious, what, if any, involvement does the Equity and Inclusion Office have in reviewing and contributing and participating in the policy development around that particular long range?
So as you can see, we are an office of 3. So we actually are limited in our capacity right now to do deep dives into departments that are working on particular initiatives. In that we can't review every single policy or everything that's implemented. The county has 22 departments. With that said, what we do is when we can and when we have capacity and departments reach out to us and ask for that review with that lens, then we do work with folks as we can. With that particular, the long-term planning, I've worked with some of the folks in the Department of Transportation and Development on other things, but not that. So we haven't been involved necessarily in that. And our vision is into the future that each of the departments would actually have an equity position at some point, so that there could be a person that can focus their time and energy on projects within a department like that.
We do have the
Yeah, that
platform
project
of
in particular would certainly benefit from your lens.
Yeah.
Oh, please continue, Maria.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say we have our Community Leaders for Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Council, where the Department of Transportation has come in and done presentations, for example, on the Sunrise Corridor or the I-205 tolling project, and they have presented to this diverse group and have gotten feedback on an equity lens and how gauging questions on how this plan or these projects will affect communities of color and other marginalized communities. And then, so that's another platform and by which way we are able to make sure that there's an equity lens on some of these projects. And yeah.
Thank you. Danielle, I saw your hand go up first.
Yeah, actually, I was wondering, it seems like there's that goal to get someone in all 22 counties, but have you considered doing training across multiple boards or multiple county departments? Because I do think the way that you present the data is compelling. The way that you tell the story of equity versus equality is compelling. And it may just move the needle just a little bit and get folks thinking in a different direction. So I was wondering if you thought about that.
Yes, you want to answer the training question, Cece?
Yeah. So we that's actually been one of our big internal goals. So we are doing a training that is required for all county employees. And it talks about some of the things we mentioned here today. It's a total of 4 hours. So it goes through diversity, equity, inclusion, same storm, different boats, leading with race. It talks about much more than that as well. And what we've done so far is, as of next month, we will have trained all of our managers and supervisors first, so that they will be prepared when their employees go through to talk through with them, answer questions they have, just kind of dig in if folks are still thinking about stuff after our workshop or wondering how to implement it in their work. Additionally, we will have a second training that's required for only all managers and supervisors that they take after that first training. And that digs in a little bit more to help folks have like if concerns come up in the workplace, how do they best approach those concerns? How do they know where to go, and how to just create a work environment that really feels like everyone is truly included in that work environment. So yes, one of our major goals, we have four internal priorities, and training is one of our 4 internal priorities.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I do want to say as a comment, I work for a Fortune 50 health insurance company, and I've been in health insurance since 2001, and it's been amazing to see the shift over the last few years. Now we're talking about social determinants of health for our Medicaid clients, customers, right, members. We're talking, you know, when our signatures include pronouns as a default. And so it's just been really amazing. These conversations that I've been able to have in the workplace now versus even 2 or 3 years ago have been huge. So that's why I'm thinking, you know, this type of training helps people have these conversations that sometimes are uncomfortable to have because people just don't have the language.
Yes, thank you, Danielle. And one more thing I want to say is that because what we offer is more of the foundational basic training, and we know that folks are varying stages of their journey and understanding around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Part of what we're doing too is sort of building our roster of experts and consultants that can then work with a particular department to provide technical assistance, because there are folks that do, for example, like social service work with the cross-section of equity or transportation and equity. And so we are also trying to connect folks with the right people that they need for further technical assistance.
Sarah, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, everyone. That was awesome information, super informative. On the first bullet point that was discussed, there was the communication tool used for multilingual or multi-language. So for communications for, say, like the wildfires or the ice storm, is it my understanding that you're saying that there wasn't something in like a Spanish language that went out? Because I know we had alerts that we received, but is it my understanding from your presentation was that they didn't have that available in other languages?
Yeah, unfortunately, we didn't have the alerts go out in multiple languages, but that is something that we are discussing at the Emergency Operations Center. And I serve as the equity officer at the Emergency Operations Center. And so that's definitely something that's our top priority. We did, however, work really closely with Public and Government Affairs and contracted with culturally specific organizations to make sure that we translated all further communication on our social media and county webpage. So we do try and put every communication out in several different languages. And we are still working on the alert system to make sure that when something else happens, that we are able to send out those alerts in several different languages.
Oh, that's good, because that was huge for me.
Yes.
I was affected by both. So, and then my second question, is there anything in today's presentation and talking to our community that we can do as community members that, and you guys have provided great information. I know you guys are doing stuff at a much higher and more research and intense level, but just something as community members, is there something that, you know, we can do from listening to the information that you've provided? How can we get involved, or, you know, what can we do as a community based on the information you've shared?
I love that question. Thank you for asking that. I think I did share with Danielle, I think it was the link where you can read the environmental scan report. It's a really, again, like I said, the environmental scan is just preliminary work, but I think it will give you some really great perspective of Clackamas County and some of the things that you might want to look at. The reason why I say that is because the researchers also identified 3 different tiers in terms of where we might be in a community or as a city or county-wide, whatever organization you're in. So for example, tier 1 is unclear about our DEI needs, right? Like very sort of at the beginning stages of exploring that. Tier 3 is more advanced. And for each of the tiers that they identify, they say, if you think you're in this tier as a community or as a city, these are some of the things you might want to try as your next. Yeah.
Okay.
So I would
That's
definitely
cool.
recommend that you take a look at that for sure.
I will.
And I
Okay.
think the overarching message is about really thinking about how do we create space so that it really feels like our community is a welcoming place for everyone.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. That's good. Awesome. Thank you.
And Martine, I didn't get the actual link. I just got, here is the link. So if you can send it again, you can actually send it to everyone. And then I'll put it into the notes as well, the minutes.
I also put in the chat our link to our website as well, so you can scroll through there, and it does have the it's the main page that Martine will then add, you know, the link for this, and it also has land acknowledgement information as well too.
So I received a question in the chat, and it was regarding the engaging with the cities, and some different the cities that have contributed funding and allowing engagement or outreach for increasing engagement in the cities. Do you have any suggestions for those of us who are trying to build equitable engagement in the unincorporated areas?
I'm sorry, I was trying to do a million things at once. I was trying to put the thing in the chat and then unmute myself. So
I found the link, Martine. So go ahead and answer the question. I'm gonna just paste it right in here.
thank you. You know, that is a really good question. And I think that I need to learn more about how you all, I know that this, you're a CPO and how you come together in terms of how do you organize? Do you have a place where you can come together? Valerie, I think should give us a little bit of some background around that. I think with, cities, it's like because, there's a city structure in place and electeds, and then also a place where people can come to. They have that sort of advantage. And so I think I would answer your question with asking the same question back to you, because you know what it's like to be in an unincorporated area, thinking about what have been the barriers, what have been the strengths being unincorporated versus being incorporated as a city. What have you noticed about community? Whose voices have you seen at these meetings at the table? Who haven't you seen at the table? And what might be the reasons, and what might be the ways that you can bring those voices or those underrepresented groups. But I might just ask you that same question back to you, because you're the expert in what it's like to be in to live in an unincorporated area.
It's slightly disorienting. Valerie, did you want to say something about that?
Not about that. I had a question, but I saw that Joyce Johnson has a question.
Yeah, Joyce had her hand up first. Yeah, thank you. Joyce, go ahead.
Well, I think that's a really good point that was just brought up about, living in an unincorporated area. And I think that it's, I've lived here for 31 years, and I've never been to an Oak Grove community meeting. And I think that it is difficult to feel a part of a sort of governing body, or community members that are joined in goals and whatnot. So this has been very interesting for me just to sit in tonight. But what I wanted to say about when I raised my hand was that I really commend these three women for biting this off and really trying to organize this county, because that's a huge job. And it's a long time coming. It's really a long time coming. It's been needed for a long, long time. I came out of education. I'm a retired educator. And the last 10 years, I taught ELL K through 5 at an elementary. And it was shocking to me how long it has taken, and is still taking, education to get on board to meet communities of diverse communities and the needs for involvement. And anyway, it's a huge job. Thanks for your presentation, and it was good. Thanks.
So one of the things that we talked about a little bit when I pre-met with you was that we often hear people say, well, how do we get the message out? So for example, we want more equity. We want more people involved. And it's like, so we want more people to come to our Zoom meeting at 7 o'clock on the fourth Wednesday of the month. Okay. So can you offer some thoughts about other ways that we can connect other than, trying to get everybody at a Zoom meeting at 7 o'clock at night on the fourth Wednesday?
I know I keep jumping in, but I want to give Maria and Cece an opportunity. You're good? Okay. So pandemic makes it really hard because I think the most natural, you want to try to connect with community in the most natural ways possible, right? So like things like community events and block parties and, right, how do you get families, people with kids or people with their pets, like out and about and coming together. And it's harder to do now with COVID, but I think that opportunities to create a coming together, opportunities to create connections with folks in your community, that's not just the 7 p.m. on the fourth Wednesday, but other, during the day, during the summer, where people can come and just connect and get to know and build relationship. A lot of the diversity, equity, and inclusion work is about building relationship and in a meaningful way, right? Not a lot of times, especially with government. I've been a government employee for a long time now. I think I'm okay to say this, Commissioner Savas, but a lot of times government, it does feel very transactional, right? And you can understand that it ends up being that way. We know though, that building relationships that's really meaningful is not transactional, it's transformational. It's really getting to know folks for the sake of getting to know them. And as you do that, then you better understand the needs, you better understand the gaps, you better understand the experiences of others that are different from yours. And even if then those folks are still unable to make it, we can talk about all the ways to take away barriers for folks so they can participate in these meetings. But even if the goal isn't that they participate in the meetings, how can then you be connected better with folks in other ways, through other means, and still bring the voices of those folks without them having to physically be here to voice it? So that is kind of a vague response, but I hope you sort of get the idea of what I'm saying. And then throw a pandemic on top of that and good luck.
I appreciate that. And
Thanks for.
We've talked a little bit
Thanks for
about
that. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Valerie.
I was going to say, we talked a little bit about maybe having liaisons or people that were connected to community that could then also bring information and be a voice, so that we don't expect that everybody can be, but we can be at the same meeting at the same moment, but figure out other ways for people to actually participate.
So we are running a little bit over. I've been enjoying the discussion, but I am going to turn it over to Commissioner Savas for the final question or comment of this segment. So go for it.
Thank you, Joseph. I want to thank Martine and Cece and Maria for their presentation. They're rock stars. They're doing a great job at the county for us, and outside the county as well. They're here tonight. When you were talking about access and the meeting tonight, for example, I can't help about the people that have either poor internet access or no internet access, for example. If they were to play their presentation again of the slideshows, and you were all to have a mindset of transportation, you saw the bicycles, for example. Just imagine you want to go to work, or you talk about barriers to going to work, going to the doctor, going to school, education, all of that. Transportation is a big, huge challenge in this county. And I was taken aback by a slideshow that I saw at a TriMet meeting last week, and it showed the extremely low income, 200% number of income across the region. And when you look at that map, boy, I'll tell you, it's almost an exact map of where the lowest access to transportation is. So as the better access to transportation, the higher the rents. Therefore, people get economically displaced. This is a huge problem. And when we talk about making more investments in transportation, or what kinds of investments, transit in particular, it's my goal. You talk about two different modes. One is coverage and one is frequency. Frequency means the bus comes more often. Coverage is trying to cover the areas that don't have transit. So when we think about low income populations, I think about coverage. When I think about access, I think about transportation, I think about broadband. And also you can't help but factor in the rents and the economic displacement aspects. But a deep subject, but I just want to plant that seed for a future discussion. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Well, again, Martine, Cece, and Maria, thank you so much for taking the time out of your evening to join us. And we really appreciate having you and hope we'll get to see you again.
Thank you for having us.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I am going to jump back into my presentation really quick. We have a few LUART updates, and then we'll have some committee updates, and we'll wrap up a few minutes behind schedule. But first off, we have a few decisions to report on, and then one new application that I can basically describe, but don't really have any slides for because it came in kind of late. And then just an update on the housing strategies phase 2. So we finally did get a decision from the hearings officer on the 12 lot subdivision on Whipple Avenue. This was approved, kind of as expected after we saw the other application for the wetland delineation come in. And we knew that the wetland was too small to be recognized by code. So we knew that this was going to end up going the way that it did. The appeal period is open through February 14th. And so if that's certainly an option. But at this point, we didn't really see anywhere where it was deficient in the code to, warrant the denial. So an appeal probably wouldn't go anywhere, but the appeal period is open through February 14th. This is just the site plan. There will be, some 5 lots along the steep slope, and then some lots over here along Whipple Avenue, and a couple other lots here on a private street. And so that was basically, again, the way we expected that to go. So then coming up soon is a public hearing before the Board of County Commissioners to review the Hinsman House as a possible historic landmark. The last time that we met, we talked about this because it was going before the Historic Resources Board, and they made their recommendation to approve. And so it will go to the Board of County Commissioners at 10 a.m. on February 9th. And we'll send out a link in our follow-up email if you have any interest in commenting on this when it goes to the hearing. The Thrive Therapeutics home occupation on Laurie Avenue down on the Willamette River, the north end of Laurie behind Rose Villa. This was appealed, and on December 15th, it was affirmed by the hearings officer on the appeal. So the appellants did not succeed. It was approved, and will be, or the permit is, being issued. And then, like I said, I did have. Let me go back. I'm gonna stop sharing this, and I'm just going to share really quick. We did have one other application come in, and so I'll go ahead and show that to you. So this is the address here is on Warnock Lane, but it is a flag lot, and they're proposing to, the application is to divide the flag lot into two different lots. I believe this is the R10 district, and so the minimum lot size, is, or the average minimum lot size should be 10,000 square feet. Both of these, exceed that. The flagpole partition, site layout is very common. This is, well within code. And in a quick review of the application, it looks like everything is in order to comply with the relevant standards and approval criteria. So this will likely be approved. I don't have a better site context for this. Maybe I can just put it on Google Maps. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure I could show you guys where this was, because I don't intuitively know where Warnock Lane is. So sorry for not being prepared on this, but okay, so here's Rosie Road and Oakhurst, and here's Warnock Lane. Okay. It's off of McNary, and so we've had some activity up on McNary recently. There's a subdivision at the northeast end of McNary. So this, I'll give that a second to load for you guys. So here's the lot at the end of Warnock. And that will be, again, flag lot will create a new lot behind where a new house is proposed, is likely to be proposed. It's not proposed as part of this application. So with that, we're going to get to our committee update. First up is Rich with an update from the Community Emergency Response Team.
Okay, hi. SURGE has been operating with diverse leadership, still supporting clinics and responding when called out for emergencies and weather. A radio to facilitate communication locally in the event of downlines is being installed as and when purchased. Classes are held periodically for first aid, CPR, and AED certification. Right now, they're on hold for COVID. Classes are offered at the University of Utah. If you wish to become a CERT member, you can take it online from your home. We don't yet have classes, a final participation class to try it out. And that's what we're up to.
Thanks, Rich. Up next, we have Mark Elliott with an update on the Concord Property and Library Planning Task Force.
Thank you, Joseph. I'm going to attempt to share my screen to show some updates that I have, and let's hope that it works. And I'm going to assume that you can see this, and if you cannot hear me, please let me know. We had a meeting with on the Oak Lodge Library and Concord Community Center last week. This was a meeting with the NCPRD District Advisory Committee, the Library Board, and the Task Force for the Library Community Center. So these are some slides that were shared in that meeting, and I thought it would be useful for our group to see what is up. So the NCPRD folks have put together 3 options for the library task force to take a look at our next meeting. These 3 options represent slight changes or different changes in the scope of the project. And I think it's helpful for all of us to see what these different options are. So I'll start with first with option 1, and I'm going to assume that you're going to see this all right. Option 1 is the original site development that was approved by the task force and by the Board of County Commissioners at the end of, I'm going to say 2020, I'm going to get it wrong, a while back. I'm going to say probably about a year ago. In this synopsis, in this option, the library community center are a shared facility with the library being a new building. And one of the important elements to see here is the total library area is around 19,950 square feet. The second option that was is being taken a look at, the purpose of these options 2 and 3 are because of a cost overrun on the project. These two options reduce the scope of the project, and these two options kind of give us some options to see how that reduction in scope might look. So in this case, in option 2, the library is still in the same location, and it is still partially a new building and partially a renovation of the existing Concord School. The difference, I think you'll see in the next slide, is that the square footages are reduced. So the library square footage has been reduced down to 17,000 square feet in this case. And the community center portion of the project has been reduced to eliminate or to put the future gym and locker rooms into a future phase. So in this case, in phase 2, if phase 2 were to be adopted, the community center would be most likely constructed over a series of phases over a certain number of years, with this initial phase including some remodel of the existing Concord School. In the third option, in this option, the library has been pulled away from the community center so that each building is its own entity. So in this case, the library, again, the square footage has been reduced down to about 15,000 square feet from that 19,000 plus square footage in the original scope. And all of the functions of the library are within its own footprint, its own building. The community center, in this case, does include a future phases for build out of the future gym and locker rooms. The next slide then kind of shows some of the financing for these three. So under option 1, which again is the original concept, there is about a $21.1 million funding gap between the library and the community centers, or I should say $23.3 million gap. Option 2 brings that gap down to about $4.5 to $5.5 million, and option 3 brings that down to about the same number. So I think what I wanted to mention was just that an understanding of that in these different phases or in these different options, the size of the library is being reduced as a consideration of a cost savings. So next thing to know is what the project timeframes are. Original option 1 was about a 33-month duration, and option 2 and 3 are about the same. It would be important to know that these design periods and permitting and construction duration periods have been extended because of the pause that's taken place since the project was determined to be over the budget here about 6 months ago. Next thing I want to let you know is what next meetings that are coming up. So the NCPRD District Advisory Committee is having a meeting on February 9th, and the project will be discussed there. Our next Oak Lodge and Concord Task Force meeting is on February 16th, and the Library Board meeting on February 17th. All of these meetings are open to the public, and you are able to participate in these meetings by Zoom. So that's my report on the library. I'm just, would be happy to hear any questions or any comments anyone might have. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Anita, I see you have a question.
Well, it's more like a comment that these three options have been proposed, but there are people in the community who are thinking that none of those options are the right one going forward and that other ones need to be considered. And so later, Chips will be discussing some of that with you.
Thanks, Anita. And unless there's other questions for Mark, up next is Chips. So he's going to give the update for NCPRD on behalf of Anita tonight. So Chips.
Hi, I'm Chips Janger. This is actually Anita's participation, but she and I were talking, and I have talked to several people recently in the last week since these last couple of meetings about what's going on at Concord, in the Concord complex. And she suggested that perhaps I speak a little, because the way that I've seen it and other people, there seems to be a lot of confusion about what's happening over in Concord, because the fact that it's significantly over budget for the project that was suggested, and the project that was sketched by the county that people have been following for the last 2 years. One of the things that has become clearer and clearer during the last month when we've examined this is that the confusion has to do not with the individual projects. The confusion has to do with the fact that two separate projects have been put together into one, because the library is one significant entity and NCPRD is quite a different one. They have completely different funding sources. Their finances are different. Their revenue streams are different. They're completely different. They're not at all the same. The problem has been, it appears, and when we look at it more and more, is that they've been put together very much. The library does not experience a significant shortfall at all. The library has much of its own funding. The library is continuing to get funding. It continues to get funding annually in various ways, and we won't go through all the streams of sources of revenue for the library. NCPRD is a completely different situation. So what we wanted to do is what happens if we separate them and let them operate on their own as they were originally. The reason that this happened is because even though they're separate projects, they both would have a community that both deal with, each of them would have their own community meetings to talk about these. And the counties realized that, thought, and perhaps wisely or not, that if you put them together, they could save money and have only one community project instead of two. Problem is that it mixed these two up. There is a significant shortfall in the community center because it was created without the funds to build it, but not the library. So what we've talked about recently, and what many people are talking about, is what happens if we should separate the library. The library should be built at the original size that we were talking about for this community. As our community is going to grow, this library was recommended by the Library Association. This is a size not arbitrary, but was suggested because it matches the size of our community, and our community is continuing to grow. So we want to keep it at the original size separate the library and the community center and create a park as was originally designed in conjunction with the library. The reason that I'm here speaking is because 3 years ago, I was the chair of the Library Board of Trustees when the county was going to move the library to Gladstone. We spent a lot of time trying to stop that, which we did successfully, so that we could keep the library in Oak Grove, in Oak Lodge, so that it's our own library. And as a result of that, we want to build it here, we want to keep it here, and we want to fund it. At the time, we on the library board looked at all the new libraries that had been built here in the last 10 years, and we found out that they had one thing in common, which was established by my going to Northern California to see all the libraries that have been built there in the last decade. They were all built around a beautiful sylvan environment, around a beautiful park area that would open up into a park, into an amphitheater that would be, that makes a perfect ambiance for a library. This is what we wanted here. Unfortunately, during the pandemic, because there were no library people involved in the planning with the landscape architect, the planning, the only people involved were NCPRD, and they made our park into a sports field and a sports field and a playground. We love the playground, but our library really needs to have a beautiful park with it, and our community needs to have a beautiful park that's not simply a sports field and a playground. So we want to move that ahead. We can move that ahead because the library has its own funding. The county's going to also support. We've been assured by all the commissioners they're going to support the library. So we want to move that ahead and separate these two projects so that they can operate on their own and they can be built on their own as we move ahead. That's really all I wanted to say because I've been asked by several people. And so I'm through. Do you have any questions? I'll be pleased to answer them.
Just really quick, Chips, is there an opportunity for public comment that we can notify our members about so that if they have opinions about this either way, that they can contribute those comments?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what you're asking, but I can make a very simple suggestion. There are really three things. One is that the library and the community center should be separated. And two, that the library—
No, not what should people say, what venues, who are we contacting to let them know about, if we want to comment on this, who are we commenting to?
Well, there's two groups of people that are involved in this, and they put them both together. There's the library board, and then there's the Concord group, the Concord Citizens Group. There, you could respond, as far as I can see, you could certainly write the Board of County Commissioners, as you always can, because they will make the final decision. And certainly you should copy the county manager. When we were originally planning this, I worked very closely with the previous county manager, who was the one who set this up. Unfortunately, he's gone, and I also had many meetings with the previous chair of the Board of County Commissioners, and he's gone. So now we have a new group, and Commissioner Savis is here. You certainly could contact Commissioner Savis and the other members of the board to express to them, I would hope, those three things: to separate the library, to keep it the original size, and to build a park in conjunction with the library. Those are the three things. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Chips. So we're running increasingly behind schedule, but I wanted to give Anita and Commissioner Savis a chance to comment as well. I think, Anita, your hand went up first.
Okay, well, yes, you can also write to the DAC@ncprd.com. That gets you to all the DAC members, which are your community representatives, and also the director and some of the other staff at NCPRD. And I think it's good for them to hear from the community members. And yeah, so Gary Schmidt and the BCC and DAC and That's a good place to start. And also, I just have to say it one more time, that the 3 points are that we're really holding now, a number of us, is to design the park to be part of the library, because recreational desires can be met at other locations. But this park is unique, being next to a library. It's a different kind of a park. And keep the 19,000 square feet or more, based on the formula that the original library agreement came up with, so that it matches the size of our community now and in the future. And definitely think of the library as physically and financially separate from the community center project. Thank you.
Thanks, Annika. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, real quick. I know you're short on time. Chips did a great job. And Anita, thanks for your involvement. Mark, you as well. I would encourage you to maybe get in touch with all of the task force members on this project, because you have a mixture of library and park people that have put years in this, right? A lot of time and effort. And because, as Chips pointed out, that they're mixed together, but they navigated this. So I think many of you know, who've been following the library stuff and all this, it's something that we've been passionate about. We've been working on for more than 3 years. If we go back to the Oak Lodge Firehouse meetings we had way back. So briefly, I will say that the options that were presented on Thursday night, I think there should be another couple options in there, because option 3, which was really the separate one, was still a smaller library. So if you actually make it the full 19,000 square feet with all the amenities as designed in option 1, the price tag's higher and the funding gap is higher. So we weren't presented with that. So that's just one example. I won't get into the weeds, but I would say that the working with the task force members to figure out what the messaging might be, so so the commissioners don't hear confusing or mixed messages, and staff doesn't hear mixed messages, that whatever one writes, it's as informed as possible. And maybe Mark and others that are part of the task force can help guide you into getting a deeper understanding in order to make sure your comments are spot on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Joyce, I see your hand is up, and then we're going to move on.
Could the contacts be put in the comments for our comments? People mentioned.
Yes.
Meeting.
Yeah, we'll make sure I'll ask Danielle to share the contact information. Maybe Anita, if you could just make sure that you chat that over to Danielle so that she can share it with everyone.
Yeah, I captured the. Yeah. Okay, sorry, I captured the email.
And we'll make sure to send it in our follow-up email too.
Yeah, but if you send it to me, I can add it.
Okay. Thank you.
Or make sure I have it correct, I should say.
Cool, thank you. And let's see, so up next, Rich with an update from CPO Summit.
Hi, yes, thanks. The CPO Summit is basically a meeting of CPO members from all over the county. And most of the discussion revolved around trying to get the CCI. CCI is a Committee for Community Involvement, which is an advisory group to the Board of County Commissioners. So most of the discussion revolved around trying to get the CCI to better represent and advocate for CPOs. It was considered that the CCI has openings for concerned citizens to volunteer, but has not advertised that option. Membership in CCI has stagnated with little turnover despite the requirements for 2-year or 3-year terms. CCI could help us have a better voice as a CPO in county planning issues, get better funding to advertise meetings, create better Zoom and eventually mixed Zoom and in-person meetings, even helping to pay for postage and printing to get more community involvement. And that's what I have.
Cool, thanks, Rich. And then we were going to have an update, I think, from the Economic Development Commission today, but the meeting was not held and is actually canceled. And so we'll be, what is that, February 23rd at 7:30 a.m. And poor Valerie was up looking for the meeting link this morning, and we didn't get the notice the meeting had been rescheduled or canceled outright, actually, until about 2 hours after it was supposed to start. So anyway, thanks for being available, Valerie.
Yeah, no, it wasn't on the website. So that was kind of a surprise that they didn't put something anyway. That's okay.
And let's see, Bob, you're still here. Do you have any updates from the Watersheds Council? I think Bob's still here. Maybe Bob's not here. Okay, well, we'll move on. Sue, do you have an update from Oak Lodge Water Services District?
I do. Actually, we've had our first community conversation about the authority change that we talked with you about last month, and I think the previous month as well. And a number of you attended that. That was on Monday night, and I particularly appreciated some of Rich Napon's comments in there. But that went well, and we had lots of good questions. So people were actually listening to the presentation and thinking about it. And I think in part that was because we had triggered some interest in this topic by the letter that went to all the customers. And we had things on our website and in bill inserts and Twitter feed and so on. So we have another one coming up on Saturday at 1 o'clock. You have to register for these. And so you can go on the Oak Lodge Water Services website to do that if you haven't been to the first one or you're just dying to hear it again. You can do that as well. But and if you have any questions, there is an outreach person at the district that you could contact. Her name is Alexa Morris. And so if you send an email to alexa@olwsd.org, I think she can head you in almost any direction that you might need to be headed. So I'm feeling good about the outreach that is occurring, and hopefully you'll be able to join us, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have if you have one right now, if you have time, Joseph.
We are short on time, but I do like to give people an option to get information if when it's timely. So,
well, you can really go to the website on this too, and there's lots of solid information, but you should have received a letter as well talking about this. There's Q&A on the website too.
Perfect. So what we can do is send out the links in our follow-up email and make sure that everyone knows where to find that information. So thanks a lot, Sue. Let's see, do we have, is Mitra still here? Or anyone from the governance project want to give an update on next month's events?
I suppose I can, Joseph. There will be an update that will be found on our website shortly. Also, we'll be sending out an announcement for Thelma's newsletter and the piece in the Clackamas Review, but we intend to have a graduate student who's been doing research on demographics in Oak Lodge, and his topic will be the changing demographics here, things that are changed as far as population, racial differences, economic changes, and it should be detail oriented and full of statistics for those of you who love that kind of data.
Okay, well, I'll be there.
I know.
Thanks a lot, Jane. Let's see. Up next, we have the Parks Advisory Board update from Mark.
Thanks again. I'm going to share my screen again and give you guys just a little bit of an update on the County Parks Department. So when I moved to Elk Grove here about 4 years ago, and I heard there were 2 parks departments, I got really confused. So actually, there's more than two parks departments within the county. There's probably many of them. The state, the county, individual cities, the federal government, you name it, there's quite a few different parks. But actually, you all know about the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation Department, but also you have your own County Parks Department in it as well. So that County Parks Department has its own advisory committee, of which I have been a member for about the last 3.5 years. So I wanted to just take a second just to maybe educate some of us who may not know that much about the Parks Department, a little bit about what we are and a little bit of what's going on with that. So first of all, we have within the Parks Department, we maintain 11 parks throughout the county, 1 marina and 1 golf course. And we are independent of the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation Department. We're our own group within, I'm going to get this wrong, and I apologize, Commissioner Savas, I should know this by heart, part of the Community Development Department, I believe. So I apologize if I got that wrong. Primarily, the Parks Department is something many people don't know, is that our primary funding for our Parks Department comes from park fees, with less than 5% of our operating budget coming from the county general fund. So it's almost completely self-funded through our parks fees. And I think that's a very big difference between the County Parks Department and NCPRD. The County Parks Department has around a $3.5 million budget per year. That does not include the golf course work, what they bring in, but just the Parks Department itself. In comparison, the NCPRD budget that was approved for this coming year is approximately $38.3 million, or 10 times bigger. They have a lot more parks and they do a lot more, but it's just in comparison between the two of them, it's important to know there's quite a bit of difference between the two. Recently, just in our last advisory board meeting that occurred this year, the advisory board is recommending to the Board of County Commissioners that parks fees be increased for the coming budget year by about approximately 9%. And those fee increases will begin hitting the parks in July if that is approved by the ECC. You know, our park fees are actually pretty low in comparison to a lot of other for-profit and state entities. We try to keep those fees down so that more people have access to the parks. And throughout a variety of different economic, they're based on how much money they have available to them. So another thing I wanted you to know is that the advisory board is considering making recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners and to the general public about future income options to fund major park improvements. There's a lot of ideas and out there for making pretty major improvements to Barton Park and also to some other properties that the park has that are unimproved, and also to create a reliable income source for the parks administration and operations. In the last several years, they've taken quite a hit in their operation budget and have had some difficulty in being able to maintain staff or to grow the staff in order to take care of the parks, even though we are having an increase in park use. So that was what I wanted to present, and I'm happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
I see Tip's hand is up. You're on mute. Sorry.
That's your
You're muted, Tip.
You are
you go.
absolutely right. A lot of us, I really wasn't aware of that. I would like to get a list, and I don't know if you have one, of what the county parks are because I'd like to know that and where the marina is, because I mean, this is very interesting, certainly to me, and I like parks, and I didn't realize the county had parks other than CPRD. I mean, obviously they do, but I'd like to see where they are and the difference. Also, just a technical question. I think your fees are very low, but when you said a raise by 9%, does that mean to 9% or to 14%?
All of the fees are being raised at their current rate by approximately 9%. So if it was $9, it might go up to $10. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. I think that's perfectly fair. Thank you for that report. It's really good.
So we'll make sure to get a link to the parks page in the follow-up email, Chip, so that you can see, you know, they do, I believe the webpage does show all the different facilities that Parks manages. So, okay, so I'm going to share my screen really quick. And we're pretty close to wrapped up here. So just a really quick update from the Pedestrian Bikeway Advisory Committee, of which I am a member. Coming up pretty soon will be the work on the Bike Walk Clackamas plan, and this is the plan to, you know, kind of look at really comprehensively, you know, the pedestrian and bicycle networks, and you know, really how our, you know, roads accommodate pedestrians, bicycles, you know, on major streets as well as our neighborhoods. And so it's a pretty big deal, and it should end up identifying you know, some you know, probably some projects that could happen in this area. So we'll make sure that when they recruit for the advisory committee, that we send out announcements so that you're aware of the opportunity to participate in that. The next meeting of the PBAC is on February 1st. And if you have any requests for you know, different areas, different streets in the neighborhoods that you know, where we need sidewalks or where we have really chronically unsafe bicycle or pedestrian infrastructure, please let me know, or please let us know. Send an email to contact@oakgrovecpo.org and just let us know what your concerns are, and we'll make sure that I'll make sure that we're relaying those up to the transportation department, and you know, we'll keep you guys informed. So. Oh, and then specifically, I know that there was some interest, just really quick before I leave that, there was some interest in some possible funding sources for crosswalks in the vicinity of Rex Putnam High School on Rothie Road. You know, right up the street from that, the Whipple subdivision is one case, and obviously, well, maybe not obviously, many high schools, including Rex Putnam, are kind of madhouses when school gets out. And traffic-wise, it's nuts where, you know, all the cars and pedestrians and buses and bicycles are all emptying out into the street network. And there's a possibility that we'll be able to fund some safer crosswalk infrastructure using the fee in lieu of funding pool. And that's where some of these smaller land use applications that we get in the area that elect not to build sidewalks on their own frontage get to throw money into a pool, and that money becomes available to do projects like this, where we put in rapid flashing crosswalks or other safer pedestrian infrastructure. And so because there's a possibility of a project going in on Rothie, or a couple new crossings perhaps going up on Rothie, I know there's some neighborhood interest in that. I want to at least call attention to that and say that it is on the radar, but we don't necessarily know if the funding is secured, or you know, when exactly we'll find out about that, but really hopefully pretty soon, and we'll keep everybody informed when we have projects in the pipeline. Last thing on the ABCs, we have current recruitments, and the ones that are closing by the end of this month are the Community Health Council and Library District and Clackamas County Budget Committee. So we'll make sure that this link is in our follow-up email, and it is that weird web3.clackamas.us/ABC. Not sure why that can't be a www, but they still have that as web3. So we'll make sure that link's in the follow-up email, so you know where to apply. With that, I'm going to stop sharing and ask if there are any announcements from the floor. Okay, then I will go back and show that our next meeting date will be February 23rd. So and then also next month will be on February 7th will be a board meeting, and then this year the board has decided that we will be meeting in the even numbered month. And so there's the next several board meetings through dates through August. So okay, thanks everybody. That is our show. Appreciate having you here, and I know we try to do social time at the end of these through about 9 o'clock, and that leaves us about 5 minutes. So feel free to stick around and chat. Valerie, go ahead and stop recording.